This week on Technicolor Blood, our reaction to the first images from Joaquin Phoenix's new Joker film, some updates on Scarlett Johansson's new standalone Black Widow movie, and we'll talk about Mel Gibson's next film.
Also, Kevin Spacey is in trouble again, and a new Deadpool movie before the end of the year.
All that and whatever else we come up with this week on Technicolor Blood. Welcome to another edition of Technicolor Blood. My name's Chris. I'm here with Terrence. Terrence, are you ready to talk about a lot of development stuff this week?
Man, I can't wait. That's one of the things I love talking about the most.
Development stuff.
Development stuff.
And then shooting down the development stuff.
Oh yeah, I like being critical of development stuff.
Of course. Do you have any ideas for your own development ideas? No, you don't.
No.
You're just going to shoot down the bad ones.
I do a lot of great work from an armchair.
Same. Okay. Let's start off with, speaking of shooting things down, maybe a little bit. The first images of Joaquin Phoenix as the Joker in the new DC Joker film that takes place in the 80s, gritty 80s New York City thing. I was underwhelmed by the images, but I also have probably a fairly well-informed theory as to why. What did you think of the images?
Right. So they have now released, well, I think we've seen in all three iterations of the Joker from that movie. We've seen just Joaquin Phoenix in some 80s street clothes.
It was literally just Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah,
The news came out, first images of Joaquin Phoenix in the new Joker film, and it was just Joaquin Phoenix.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's got like a poor man's 80s haircut, but yep. I mean, it's Joaquin Phoenix, so he probably already had that. He's kind of an odd dude.
He showed up in that, I'm sure.
Yeah, so then the second image we saw was him in what was described as Joker makeup. It's basically just him in some clown makeup, but again, still just wearing street clothes. And then most recently, there's been a third image of him, which is him just dressed like a clown with like the big goofy shoes and everything.
Yeah. So I will give them, well, I'm not going to say I'm going to give them credit, but this definitely wasn't what I expected to see.
No, not at all.
But I think probably what we're seeing is sort of that same, I forget which Spider-Man movie it was where there's cheap-ass Spider-Man to begin with, where he's sewing up and making his own costume.
Yes.
I think that's probably what we're seeing here. We're seeing Joaquin's just DIY. I mean, clearly from the tone of what this movie is supposed to be about, I mean, the entire time it'll probably be DIY. But I'm guessing that he hasn't perfected, quote-unquote, perfected his Joker look from the time that we are seeing the costume in these early clips.
Yeah.
Otherwise, some horrible mistake has been made.
Yeah, I can only assume that this is his infatuation with clowns prior to becoming the actual Joker, where we'll see a far more menacing and disturbing take on what the Joker looks like.
Yeah, right now it literally looks like he would be going to a child's party and performing like in a non-creepy way. He just would be literally doing that, like he would come with a bouncy castle or something.
Now, let me throw this out to you. What would you think of this idea? Since they're setting the movie in the 80s, what if they were to try to recreate the types of costumes that you would have gotten if someone had made a Batman movie in 1980?
Sure. I mean, that's as good a theory as any.
Yeah, but would you like that, or would that be a letdown to you as a film goer? And how would audiences react to that?
I mean, if the whole point is for it to be as realistic as possible for the time, then I guess I wouldn't be let down by it, but I'd have to see what it looks like.
Well, I mean, to put some perspective on that, that would essentially be like, hey, we're going to tell a Superman movie from 1980, and we're actually going to use the costume that Christopher Reeve wore in 1980. I just don't think audiences would go for that. I'm not saying that's what they're doing, but it would be an interesting idea.
Yeah. I think we've said this before, but every time new information comes out about this movie, it doesn't do anything for me, despite the fact that it has all these things surrounding it. They mention, Scorsese's involvement as a producer. They say it's supposed to have the feel of Taxi Driver, which I may have mentioned 10 times already is my all-time favorite movie. Robert De Niro is actually in this movie, which I didn't realize until fairly recently. So
crazy.
But still, like, the news I'm seeing and the thoughts surrounding it are not getting me excited. But I mean, I'm not gonna lie to you people out there. I'm sure we'll be there opening weekend.
Oh yeah, absolutely, no question at all.
That's going to happen. I just was hoping to be a little bit more excited about it than I am right now, and of course we still have many months to go.
Nothing I've seen or heard in and of itself would be a problem for me, except for the fact that this is coming from Warner Brothers DC movies, and they're all just so unreliable. They've had one, maybe two decent ones, and the rest are essentially terrible films.
Yeah.
There's just nothing to really give you the confidence that, like, you know, hey, this new take is going to be a good take. It could just be this new take is going to be as corny disaster as everything else we've done has been.
Yep, we're going to have to see. It's interesting that they're trying to take a new twist on it with this whole standalone movie that doesn't necessarily cross over with the others, but I continue to be skeptical, as is my nature.
Yeah, and I mean, we've got so many Jokers, as we've discussed already. You know?
So side topic related to the Joker. You and I discussed this a long time ago. Unfortunately, it's not anything we came up with. I wish one of us could take credit for this. But a long time ago, we saw that comparison where it basically took each famous Joker and compared it to a drug.
Yes.
Cesar Romero, I think, was LSD. Is that right?
It's been so long.
Jack Nicholson was cocaine.
Right.
Heath Ledger was heroin.
Right.
And the update was Jared Leto was meth.
Right.
So did I leave anybody out? I mean, obviously I'm leaving out Mark Hamill's, voiceover, but as far as in film. So I'm wondering where, if whoever came up with that comparison list will give us what he thinks Joaquin Phoenix's character will represent in that movie. They're sort of running out of drugs that people recognize at this point.
Yeah. You're going to have to go back to something that only existed in the 80s.
Yeah, or maybe we're just underrating how many different kinds of fun drugs there are, being that we're not drug addicts. Maybe there are several drug addicts listening right now saying, oh, what about this one? So, next bit of news, and we'll be brief on this, I promise, because we've hit it on almost every episode so far. Another James Gunn update. I know you were dying for this. So, we had discussed a while back that Marvel Disney was still going to use James Gunn's script for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, and we thought that was very hypocritical. And I don't think at the time it was officially official, and I'm still not entirely sure that it's officially official. But now James Gunn's brother Sean somehow got loose and informed some news outlet, I think it was Collider, or it might have been just Collider, reporting from a different source, that they are in fact going to use his brother's screenplay for the Guardians of the Galaxy 3. So my short thoughts on that are that continues to be incredibly hypocritical.
Right. Yeah, I would have guessed that the next update we would have gotten was an announcement of who the director was going to be. So in reality, with no director attached to this project, we have no idea what script they're going to use.
Yeah.
When you bring a new director onto a project, 9 times out of 10, the very first thing they do is kill the previous script and start from scratch. So, I mean, maybe Disney has just laid down the law and they said, whoever we hire has to use this script, but that's highly unlikely in Hollywood today.
And man, that would be a tremendous red flag on what the quality of that movie would be, I think, in an early stage, if it's one of those things where they say, hey, you can come in and direct this picture, but you can't really have any wiggle room with the script. I mean, this is the director they're talking to.
Well,
I would think any director coming in worth their salt wouldn't agree to that unless they do what I suspect they might do, which is take someone who's completely unknown and hire him with a lot of conditions.
Yeah, maybe. But I mean, we're also in an era where how many movies in the last 5 or 6 years have had directors fired, and then notable directors come on board, and not only do they not have any control over the screenplay, but they're stuck using footage that was shot by this other director.
Yeah.
Occasionally it's a Joss Whedon thing where he's like, okay, I'll use half of it, but I'm going to completely rewrite the rest of it and shoot my own footage for it. That's a total train wreck. That didn't work at all.
Yeah.
And then you've got guys like Ron Howard who comes in and he's like, well, okay, we'll use the script and I'll keep some of the footage that was previously shot and I'll just move forward from where the previous guy left off. That didn't work out either. Nope. It's just, I can't remember a period of time where there's been this kind of turnover on film productions as deep into them as we've seen.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll have to see. I think we've hit this a lot in the past, so no need to belabor it, but we'll just... Again, I'm shocked that, like you said, the next update wasn't just that there was a director announced. You'd think that'd be coming down anytime now. And I don't know, maybe it doesn't even merit mention until they actually do that, because everything is just going to be speculation until that point anyway.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if they're having a hard time finding somebody. You wouldn't think so,
yeah,
but like you said, if their goal is to avoid getting just some scrub that nobody's heard of, then I mean, maybe they're having to negotiate extra hard.
Yeah, if they're narrowing the scope of what that director can do, then I imagine that would cause a lot of problems trying to bring someone on.
Sure.
All right, next piece of news, a wild switch in tone here. We talked recently about Orson Welles' unfinished film, The Other Side of the Wind, that's going to be released on Netflix. Well, it turns out Netflix is also kind of going all in with this, and they're going to release, at the same time, they're going to release a documentary about Orson Welles called They'll Love Me When I'm Dead. And that documentary is going to center mostly around the last 15 years of his life, and it'll include a lot of his back and forth with, I assume, creatives and studios about that last film that he wasn't able to finish. I continue to be super intrigued by this. I want to watch the movie. I want to watch the documentary, and I think it's still a little bit off from being released. But I mean, if you're not an old school film fan, you may not even know who Orson Welles is. But if you are even a little bit of a old school film fan, then you know he's a legend. Yeah,
and I mean, obviously, I'm intrigued by the documentary. I want to watch it, but there's that other part of me that's like, oh man, the last 15 years of his life, that's long past his prime. That's when Welles is not in a good place. He's not the man that he was. He's not the force driving great filmmaking in Hollywood anymore. In fact, he's the opposite of that at that point. He's just taking any role that's offered to him. He's making TV commercials. Mm-hmm. It'll be fascinating at the same time, for people who are big fans of his. It's going to be a heartbreaking documentary to watch, I think.
Yeah, probably so. But, you when you're a fan, you take the good and the bad, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so another piece of development news. Chris Pine of Star Trek fame and Wonder Woman fame and many other fames. Wasn't he in one of the Bourne movies? Am I making that up?
No, he was one of their attempts at Jack Ryan.
Jack Ryan, that's what I meant. Yeah. One of the Jack Ryan movies. All of those things. Anyway, he is going to be starring in a period piece called Outlaw King, and this is directed by David Mackenzie, he's actually directed a lot of stuff, not a lot of which I recognize, but his most famous film is unquestionably Hell or High Water from a couple of years ago. They got some Oscar buzz. Chris Pine will star as Robert the Bruce. And if you don't recognize that name in history, you might actually recognize it from Braveheart. That's the character that betrayed Mel Gibson's William Wallace portrayal on the battlefield with that horrific look in his eye. And anyway, you all remember Braveheart. So this is about Chris Pine playing Robert the Bruce. And I'm intrigued by this mainly because, similar to how I really like revenge movies, like we talked about last week, I'm also a big fan of period pieces. Although that's kind of waned in the last several years because there's been so many terrible ones.
Yeah, maybe no good ones.
Yeah, so I'm a little leery because I'm sure it's unfair, but the idea of Chris Pine having a Scottish accent or really any kind of an accent makes me sort of skeptical. But I also fully admit that's not fair because he's not a bad actor. He's shown some chops, but he kind of does candy popcorn movies, so I'm not really sure how this one's going to go until we see a trailer.
Yeah, this definitely feels like him taking a stab at a real drama. And I mean, hey, good for him, and good for Netflix taking a crack on that. And I'm excited to see it. I love Braveheart. So I'm curious to see Robert the Bruce's standalone film, if you will. I'm curious.
And Mackenzie, the director, I guess I didn't mention that Pine also was in Hell or High Water, so they have a previous relationship there. The reason I pulled this story is because, and this may be of only interest to you and I, but I think if you have an open mind, this popped up in the news because this film screened at the Toronto Film Festival, and the director Dave Mackenzie was there at the screening, and he said he could feel the audience reacting poorly to how long the movie dragged out. He could feel that the runtime was too long. The original runtime was 137 minutes. So Mackenzie, without being told by the studio or by anyone else, took it upon himself to go back into the editing room and cut about 20 minutes off of the final cut of the film. And I just really wish more filmmakers would do that, because there's two things about movies that are kind of constants for me, and that's, and I'm sure on some level you'll agree, they're almost always too long.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And movies generally don't know how to end. Like, a lot of times they just don't, for some reason, they'll have a decent movie go first act, second act, going along fine, and they don't know how to end the movie. And I love the fact that Mackenzie is addressing this issue with runtime, getting ahead of the game. He's not being told to do it. He's not griping and bitching about it like Oliver Stone did with Alexander saying, "Oh, Americans are not sophisticated enough to understand this horrible movie I made." Mackenzie is taking it upon himself to go back and cut it back, and I just think that's good, and I wish more filmmakers would be open to that sort of criticism.
Yeah, it raises the question: why can't other directors see this? Like, I mean, if this is true, and this guy was able to sense this and make that determination on his own without being told by test screenings or studio focus groups, if he just could tell on his own, why can't other directors do that? I mean, it is ridiculous how long the runtime of most movies are these days. And, you know, we're old now, so we're old enough to remember when it was the opposite, when directors had to fight for every minute of extra screen time because studios wanted short movies so that they could squeeze as many screenings in per night as possible, right? The shorter the movie, you can squeeze in an extra showing, you make more money. It makes perfect sense. And so directors would have to fight to have these long movies that were able to tell, you know, more complex stories. Well, now we've flipped over to the other side of that, where every director is allowed to make these 2-hour plus movies, whether they deserve it or not. And these movies just go on forever. They're just shooting themselves in the foot. So kudos to this guy for realizing that doesn't work for the story he's telling, and that a tighter cut of the movie is a better choice.
If you're a director, you're obviously a big fan of movies. I'd be curious to see how many big-time directors are so sort of disconnected and cut off that they don't ever actually see the final cut of their film with a movie audience. And not like a bunch of executives, but just some movie fans. Sneak in the back, watch the movie. And because what is a better critique of a movie than a fan's immediate real-time reaction?
Yeah, and this is a perfect way to do that. You know, when you've got a big-time director who's made a big-time movie, they should all just put them into a film festival so they have the opportunity to watch it with an audience that's not handpicked. It's not a screening audience. You know, it's just an audience of people who are there to see the movie. And then use the fact that you released it into the film festival as a cover to say this might not be the final edit, you know, and maybe 9 times out of 10 it is the final edit. But, you know, under the right circumstances, it gives the director the opportunity to say, you know what, I got to tighten this up, or I got to lose a thing that doesn't make any sense, or, you know, these bookends on either, you know, at the start and the finish don't work, whatever it is. You know, a change from the film festival release to the major general release, that's perfectly fine. Nobody bats an eye at that. You know, that doesn't raise any red flags. If anything, like, that's encouraging. It's like, oh, this is based on something real. This is not studio meddling. This is something to make the movie better. Yeah.
Self-awareness is a great quality to have. No matter how big and rich and famous you get, successful, if you're not self-aware of your own material, I mean, I just... You're doing yourself and your fans and the people who are going to see your movie a disservice. So, again, I applaud Mackenzie for that, and I'd be super curious to know if, you know, Ridley Scott and Steven Spielberg and Peter Jackson and all these huge name directors, if they even bother seeing it with a real movie audience, like an actual real movie audience. I'd be curious to see if that still happens. In my heart of hearts, I want to say there's no way Spielberg has lost his love of film so much that he wouldn't do that still, but I don't know.
But I mean, even by the time they do, it's, you know, the ship has sailed probably. They're, you know, it's locked in. And I mean, you know, let's be honest, there's no way Ridley Scott is. No way.
Because he's too busy, not because he's a jerk.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so mentioned last week that our silent third co-host is Outrage. And if that's the case, then our fourth show contributor is men behaving badly in Hollywood. Something else that happens a lot on this show that we continue to bring up. So, Terrence, why don't you give us a little bit of information on the dearly departed Kevin Spacey?
Yeah, so Kevin Spacey, who decided to just completely axe murder his career a year or two ago, with accusations of sexual assault and etc. He's back in the news because he's now being sued for sexual battery by a new victim. He invited whatever the male version of a masseuse is.
A masseur. I don't know if that's true or not.
All right, well, let's go with that.
Terrence is struggling right now with whether or not he should give you the details of the story. I'm just gonna pull the curtain back a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I really don't even want to get into that right now here.
Would you like a massage?
It's all over the internet. You know, you can go read up on it yourself. I mean, imagine he invites a guy to come over to his house to give him a massage and then locks the guy in the room. you can probably figure out where things go from there. Anyway, so he's now being sued for that. We'll see where that leads. It's definitely twofold because this resets the clock on Kevin Spacey ever trying to get back into the good graces of Hollywood.
Over. No chance.
Maybe that's over. Certainly at this point, I would say after this happening again, it shows that this guy's got some sort of serious problems, and I don't know that they're the kind of problems that you can fix. So
in the unspoken rankings of the worst offenders of all of these things that have happened since this whole movement started, I mean, Me Too, or in Kevin Spacey's situation, similar but different. He's definitely up there with the Weinsteins, and he's sort of in that tier. So I doubt very seriously we'll ever hear from him again, unless it's something that he self-finances. But even then, if he self-finances it, who's going to distribute? Who's going to pick it up? I can't imagine anyone would.
I mean, I don't know. There are other directors who have done some pretty terrible things sexually that somehow managed to keep their careers going. So,
in fact, and this is not on our rundown for today, but I believe today I saw news that Roman Polanski has come out and called the Me Too movement, a charade and, basically a pox upon Hollywood. And this is coming from a confirmed child rapist.
Yeah. So,
I mean, God, just know when to not say anything. Why? That is another self-awareness, great quality to have if you're a celebrity. Second quality, know when to not say anything. You can just not say something.
Absolutely. And nobody really cares what he has to say anyway. So
yeah. So you want to hit us up with some information on some Fox movies upcoming? Yeah.
So a couple of interesting pieces of information from Fox that have recently dropped is, firstly, that there's going to be a new Deadpool movie released before the end of the year. Ryan Reynolds teased that on his Instagram account, and people are pretty excited about it because, what could it mean? There's a secret Deadpool movie that nobody knew about? Well, speculation is most likely what that means is Fox is going to do a PG-13 cut of the movie and release it before the end of the year. If you remember, Deadpool 2 was released, much like the first one, as an R-rated film, and did not do quite as well as the first one. You and I had speculated that was because of the time of year that they decided to release the movie. Was not a great choice. So speculation is that they're going to take another crack at that and release a PG-13 cut of the movie at another time of year and see if they can't goose that income up a little bit. Do you have thoughts on that? I see you making a face.
I mean, my face is just confusion. Has this ever happened before? Where they recut a movie, slapped a new rating on it, and just released it again?
I mean, it
seems like in all these years it must have happened once or twice, but certainly it couldn't have been with a notable movie that was very successful.
Yeah, and certainly not within the same year.
I mean, that is really strange. And I mean, I already saw the second one, so I don't really need to see. Who's going to see this? Who's the target audience here?
Well, we know that there was a lot of footage left out of the first one, and that they would take a joke and they would shoot multiple punchlines to it. So there are several punchlines throughout the film that have alternate takes on them. And I believe the Instagram photo that Ryan Reynolds tweeted out is him in full costume. It's actually kind of funny. It's him in full costume in a recreation of the bedroom set from that Fred Savage had in A Princess Bride. And it's got current day Fred Savage sitting in bed as Deadpool reads him the book of The Princess Bride.
Okay, you're pulling me in a little bit now.
Right, again, so I think the suggestion there too is that they might have actually even shot some new footage for the movie. I mean, at this point, you just have to acknowledge that Ryan Reynolds and his gang, they're pretty wily with these Deadpool movies. They know what they're doing. So I'm in for it. Will I go see it again? That I can't say. Do I think it's a good idea that they're doing it? Yeah, I do, because I think that adolescent humor that movie, hits on. I mean, that's perfect for tweens. And if there were some who couldn't see the first one because it's R-rated, and I can't imagine in this day and age that anyone who wants to see any movie at all has any trouble seeing that movie. But assuming that they do or whatever, hey, here's another chance at it that, might open it up to an even bigger audience. At the very least, I think this is going to bump up its box office take so it's at least on par with, if not surpasses the first one. And ultimately, that's probably what the studio wants.
Yeah. But I mean, technically it's going to be a different movie though when it comes to the actual box office count. So obviously the studio only will think of that as, okay, let's just add these together. But officially, when you see the listing, it's going to be listed as a different film. They're not just going to add it to that pile. So,
but I mean, like we would of course lump them together. I think most people will. I think.
Oh, sure.
I think only, lists from publications or outlets that have to adhere to union rules will ever actually divide those into two movies. For everyone else, it's obviously the same movie.
So I feel like Hollywood as a whole will be watching closely for the results here, because I could envision, it's just like they say about sports a lot. It's the NFL is a copycat league. Same thing with Hollywood. If this does well, could you envision a scenario where they have a movie that they want to release as PG-13 or they want to release as rated R, and then when they shoot it, they shoot enough footage to be able to do both things and then have that in their back pocket if this does well? Because then essentially you're screening an extended deleted scenes section or bonus footage section from, like the Blu-ray or something.
Right. Yeah.
So, well, I mean, and
I think that's exactly what they're doing with Venom right now. So I'm sure those guys will be paying close attention to this.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, that's a good point. And Deadpool really is the perfect movie to do this with. Yeah. Because like you said, it's perfect for that sort of tween area. So I'll be curious to see, one, not if, but when this is replicated by Hollywood, and two, if they'll do it with the right kind of movie, or if they'll just sort of blindly say, oh, it worked for Deadpool, it'll work for our, period piece or whatever.
Right. And, do you think this is just the first step in eventually getting to a stage where simultaneously they release an R-rated and a PG-13 rated version of movies? I mean, like action movies would be a perfect example of that. You can go see the PG-13 one and everyone can enjoy it. But if you're over the age of 17 and you want to see the one where the violence is next level, you would just buy a ticket to the R-rated showtime. Why not?
Interesting. Yeah. I wouldn't go as far as to say that it might end up being a game changer, but it's certainly going to be something worth keeping an eye on.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. And
and then a couple other notes on the Fox movie thing is they've chosen to push back the release dates for that Battle Angel Alita film that's produced by Cameron, directed by Robert Rodriguez, with a terrible trailer. Yeah. And they've also decided to push back the release date for X-Men Dark Phoenix. The interesting speculation as to why they're pushing back the release dates for those films is kind of publicly they're saying, well, where we have them scheduled is a little crowded, so we're trying to create some space for them to really stand out. But what insiders are saying is, and I think this is fascinating, they're actually angling their release dates to coincide with holidays in China, because China has become such a critical player in the amount of money that movies make. And as you remember from 2 Transformers movies ago, where they completely set the whole climax of the film in China, specifically to attract Chinese viewers. It's become so important to the game plan for Hollywood. And that doesn't surprise me at all. That makes perfect sense. And either way, we're going to see the movie when they release it. I don't think most people know or care about that sort of thing. But, if you're interested in the kind of the business of how the industry works, I think that's kind of an interesting decision on their part.
For sure, yeah. And we will be talking about the Dark Phoenix trailer later on in the most looked forward to segment of the show, the trailer segment. Yes. I don't know if that's true or not.
That just came out.
Yeah.
Then let's see. The next bit of information that's worth passing on, I think, is just a little speculation that possibly Lionsgate Entertainment, the main portion of which is Lionsgate Films, is maybe going to be picked up by Amazon. That's just some wild speculation on the part of one of their shareholders. He happened to say when he was being interviewed by Bloomberg that he thought that was a likely thing to happen, that Amazon might acquire Lionsgate. And just a result of making that comment, stock in Lionsgate shot up 7-point-something%. Again, unless you have stock in it, none of this probably means anything. But, a lot of speculation has been floating around recently that Netflix or Amazon or somebody like that might figure out that, hey, why don't we just buy our own studio? Why are we making all this content and then giving it to another studio to distribute, or relying on them and their internal production abilities to make the content for us? Why don't we we've got the cash, why don't we buy one of these and do it ourselves? So obviously Wall Street is keeping an eye on this sort of thing, and
Sure.
they think that's a likelihood as well. And, any sort of mention or rumor that somebody might be doing that is a reason to buy into those stocks.
We definitely need a weekly financial segment on the show. I think that would be perfect for us.
I know. We know so much about it, and we can speak about it so articulately.
That's
I don't know why people wouldn't want to hear it.
Yeah, if you didn't buy up Movie Pass after our last financial segment, and you're not buying up Lionsgate now, then what are you doing?
Yes.
I don't know.
Definitely.
All right, coming up, more news, including a little tidbit from an upcoming film by Mel Gibson. Mel Gibson's name has resurfaced, or as Key and Peele so famously referred to him as, racist ass Melly Gibsons. Classic Key and Peele moment there. So Mel Gibson is going to write and direct a remake of The Wild Bunch, which of course is a legendary Western directed by Sam Peckinpah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so Mel Gibson, this guy obviously has had issues in his career. He was a wildly successful actor. He is a wildly successful director. Mm-hmm. I think he was one of those guys who was always in the running for Sexiest Man Alive every year back in his prime,
Yep.
Stretching across, that's the other thing about Mel Gibson. Stretching across all genres, man. Period piece, sci-fi with Mad Max. I mean, he's just done so much stuff.
Yeah. Helped define the action genre in the 80s when it was at its height.
Yeah, and I mean, you got to separate the man from the work sometime, and for whatever his issues are, he is a super talented actor. And I will say, when he started directing movies, I was surprised at how good of a director he was.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Talented.
Very talented director.
So I guess I'm a little bit surprised that he's doing a remake. We're always going on and on about existing properties and remakes and prequels and sequels. And, Mel Gibson's one of those guys who goes to the beat of his own drum, obviously. Sometimes not the best beat.
Right. Yeah.
So I guess I was a little surprised that he's going to do something that already exists, but maybe that's a passionate project for him, and maybe it's one of his childhood favorites. But what are your thoughts on Mel's foray into this remake?
I'm excited about it. I think this is a great choice for him. I think it matches up really, really strongly with his style.
Yep.
I think that it's unmistakable looking at just the way he shoots films and the level of, frankly, violence in his films, that Sam Peckinpah is a definite influence on him. Mm-hmm. So this I never would have thought of this before seeing that headline, but reading the headline, to me, it just fits.
Yeah, and Westerns are one of those genres that I want to love that genre.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But there's only a handful of Westerns that I truly, truly love. So seeing Mel Gibson, a talented actor and a very talented director, handle this, I definitely am much more excited about it than I would be if it wasn't him directing it.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I love Westerns back from the era of Westerns. Mm-hmm. Modern Westerns, so few of them are worth even spending any time watching. They're just so badly done. So I'm excited. I love me a good Western, and they seem to pop up every once in a while. And I think Mel Gibson could be the guy to do this one.
Mel, I don't know at this point. The article didn't say whether or not he's actually going to appear in the movie at all. I assume not, but he certainly has the look of a guy who could show up in a Western.
Sure, absolutely.
So he's one of those guys. I gotta admit, despite all the issues with him, I miss his presence in Hollywood. I miss seeing him in a movie every couple of years, mm-hmm. and I certainly miss seeing the movies that he directs because he's just so much better of a director than I ever expected when he started.
Yeah, agreed.
All right, so another bit of news. I got nothing against Mister Rodgers, man. Everyone who doesn't love Mister Rodgers.
I don't like where this is going. Are you about to attack Mister Rodgers?
Especially folks of our age. But there seems to be a weird obsession with Mister Rodgers lately. Of course, there's that documentary that came out. I have not seen it yet. I want to see it. I'm interested to see it. And then Sony, out of nowhere, tweeted out a photo the other day of a gentleman actor who you'll all recognize the name of, sitting on the edge of his trailer in full costume as Mister Rodgers for a Mister Rodgers movie. And that man was Tom Hanks. And when I saw that, my first reaction was, wow, more Mister Rodgers. And my second reaction was, there couldn't be a better actor to cast than to play Mr. Rogers than Tom Hanks.
Absolutely. That is just bang on exactly right.
So, okay, I'm opening myself up to criticism here because I have not seen the Mr. Rogers documentary, and maybe some of you out there listening have. I'm not aware of any drama or intrigue or anything overly super interesting about his actual personal life or career that merits a feature film. Terrence, are you aware of what that might be?
As far as I know, there is none of that. It's the opposite of that, and I think that's why in today's world, people are so drawn to it.
Yeah, it's like a refreshing. Yeah, it's not about a horrible, sex scandal or something.
Yeah, it's a good guy that you always thought was good, that you grew up loving, and it turns out he really is that person.
Yeah, the only other person in the history of the world that exists that matches that, I think, is probably Bob Ross. If they found out something bad about Bob Ross, I would just die.
Well, and Tom Hanks. That's why it's so perfect.
Okay, I thought you were about to say there was something bad about Bob Ross. My heart skipped a beat there.
No, absolutely not. All we can do is hope that if Mr. Rogers is highly successful, they'll just cast Tom Hanks to play Bob Ross as well. That's right.
And I know, completely absent of context, if you don't know who Bob Ross is, he's the super famous Happy Little Trees painter. I think the entire run of his show is on Netflix, so that was a expected weird tangent for me, so that's my only skill.
All right.
That's why I'm here. I'm just here for tangents.
I'm just thankful that you didn't start trashing Mr. Rodgers.
I'm not going to trash Mr. Rodgers. Why would anyone trash Mr. Rodgers?
I don't know. There was a tone in your voice.
So let's get back to some genre stuff, because that's, what we do, and we want as many people to listen as possible. So Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow movie is now expected to be released in 2020. Probably not going to start shooting until May of 2019. I continue to be excited about this. I'm glad that they finally have nailed down a release window for it. Apparently, a lot of the plot is going to center around the Y2K bug.
Oh my God.
So it's one of those things where I almost sort of wish I wouldn't have read some of the details about this, because now that I'm seeing details about it, I'm getting less excited about it.
Oh my God. No, don't do that. Oh.
Yeah. So, I mean, regardless, it's Scarlet, it's Black Widow, it's MCU. I'm going to see it. I don't know. I'm kind of hoping that there's enough poor reaction to this bit of news that they might completely change course on that. I guess other than that, I don't have a whole lot to say about it. It's just hey, it's happening. They have a sort of a window of a release set, and that's pretty much it.
They gotta fix that. That's not going to work.
I mean, I get that you want it to take place around that time, but
why do you want it to take place around that time?
Well, I just figured that's kind of where they're going with a lot of these standalone origin stories. They're going back when, they were rising up. I know your disdain of prequels. So I mean, MCU has more hits than misses, I think. So I give them a little bit of leeway, but I don't know about intertwining the Y2K thing. Spoilers, we know what happened with Y2K, and it was nothing. If that film's whole premise is that Y2K actually was going to be something, but Black Widow stops it,
she stopped it.
No.
She fixed Microsoft.
No. All right. So
listen, for you kids who have no idea what Y2K is, you should hop on Wikipedia and then ask your parents about it.
It was one of the most ludicrous times in American history.
Yeah.
Saying that now is sort of, but at the time,
but still, it was eye-opening to realize how truly, truly ignorant all of America was towards technology.
And scared to death.
Yes.
All right. More strong female character development news. DC, Warner Brothers announced that Margot Robbie's Harley Quinn movie will be titled Birds of Prey. It'll be released in February of 2020. It's directed by a woman, Kathy Yan, who has done nothing I've ever heard of. She directed something called Dead Pigs. I don't know anything about that. Apparently it was a festival hit. But I'm far less intrigued by Margot Robbie's standalone than I am Scarlett Johansson's standalone. But of course, that's rooted in my continuing disappointment in the DC movies and all the decisions they make. But who doesn't like Margot Robbie? Obviously this is another one. I'll see it. I don't know that I would say that I'm excited about it, but her character in that movie, man, I have a hard time seeing how the way she played in that movie will carry over for a 90-minute or a 2-hour film.
Well, so Birds of Prey is her teamed up with 2 other female superheroes. So she's going to be splitting screen time and I guess the lead with the other 2 as well. Although obviously she's going to be the primary lead, no question there. And they just, I just knocked something over. Nobody's dead. Everybody calm down. Mm-hmm. They've announced who the other two actresses were. I remember one of them, not the other, so I'm not even going to mention it. It's Birds of Prey, based on kind of a long-running-ish comic book from DC, but it was also a TV series, I want to say back in the early 2000s as well. So there's actually some media history behind this franchise as well. I don't know. It's intriguing. I don't know that Harley Quinn has ever been a part of that lineup of characters in the past. So they're kind of squeezing a square peg into a round hole with that. But I mean, it makes sense, right? You've got this breakout star. You've got this character that was really popular. You want to do something more with it. For whatever reason, they can't seem to get a Suicide Squad 2 script going in a direction anyone likes. So, split her off, tag her up with some other superheroes the way Suicide Squad worked, and, see if you can capture Lightning a second time.
Did you feel like Harley Quinn in the Suicide movie was one of the good things about the movie, one of the bad things about the movie, or just no reaction?
I would argue it's the only good thing about the movie.
Harley Quinn?
Yeah.
Okay, so you weren't on the Jared Leto Joker train then?
I mean, he was absolutely fine for his presence in that movie, but it's so minor. It's just, it's like 2 minutes of screen time smeared out over the course of the film that... I can hardly really say that he was a strong element of it because he's just in it so little. I mean, for that matter, the cameo by Ben Affleck as Batman is, I would say, more significant than actually Jared Leto's appearance as the Joker.
Yeah, and I didn't like Suicide Squad, and I didn't particularly like Jared Leto's performance as the Joker, but I'm 100% with the fans who were nonplussed afterwards and screaming for him to have more screen time. I mean, he certainly should have had a lot more screen time in the movie, especially it was taking away from some of the other stuff in that movie that wasn't good.
Right, yeah. I mean, I think if you were to give just the average moviegoer their druthers on this, would you rather have Joaquin Phoenix in some 1980s Joker movie, or would you like to see more of Jared Leto as, this crazy meth-fueled version of the Joker that we saw in Suicide Squad? That's a no-brainer. I mean, let's go with what's current, what's popular, and what's got an actor that everyone is, really, really excited about. Maybe not the project that they decided to go with.
Of course, there's plenty of room for both. So,
is there?
You can argue about whether there should be. All right, Terrence, you have some intriguing news to share with us about the upcoming Star Wars live-action television series.
Oh my God, I've got this. This news is so perfect for a podcast. It is amazing for a podcast. That news is there are set photos from the production of the Star Wars TV series. So just
let's look at them and then describe them.
Look really, really hard at your speaker and you might be able to make them out.
Yes. One of them is people standing and it's blurry.
Right.
So never seen anything like that before.
So the real news, I guess, is that Jon Favreau has tweeted out photos, or maybe not tweeted out, posted on a website. Regardless, from the first day of principal photography of the new Star Wars TV series. So if you want to hop online, you can look at them. There's nothing great to see. They're behind the scenes photos. So it's literally, you see the front and the back of some outdoor standing sets. In fact, if you're not really into that kind of thing, it might ruin some of the illusion for you. So maybe don't look at them. It really is nothing great to see. However, it is worth noting that the sets are large. Mm-hmm. It's clear that Disney is spending a great deal of money on this. Mm-hmm. A lot of extras in the shots as well. It just looks like it's going to be, a television production that might be akin to something like Game of Thrones. That's pretty exciting. The downside of that, of course, is that the Star Wars TV series is going to be released on a streaming service that has yet to launch. Right. It's going to be the new Disney streaming service. I'm sure that'll be a huge hit. It's Disney. Everything they touch is magical. I'm sure they'll load it up with tons of kids content as well. So it'll be a no-brainer for families. So you're definitely going to know some people who have it. If you don't end up getting it yourself, you're not going to have any trouble seeing the Star Wars series, I'm sure.
Sure. I'll give Disney a lot of credit. I know Disney is a huge, mega powerful corporation, and they've had some missteps over the years, and just negative connotation in general in America towards corporation and corporate entities.
Right. But
man, they don't rest on their laurels. They're not just going to launch this streaming service and say, we're going to fill it with existing properties. I mean, they're doing a Loki series. They're doing a Scarlet Witch series. They're doing this Star Wars live action series where they clearly seem like they've spared no expense. I mean, I give them a lot of credit for just not saying, hey, we're Disney. We're going to release this and you're going to buy it. And we're going to pull all our properties off of Netflix, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they're going to be pumping out some real big budget, well thought out new material, and I give them a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And they found a way to tie back in working with Jon Favreau again. You know, he's the guy that directed, just knocked over the same thing I knocked over a few minutes ago.
Punching things, yes.
Yes. They're working again with Jon Favreau, who directed the original Iron Man movie, which of course everyone remembers is what launched the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe.
It's the best Marvel Cinematic Universe movie, period. I don't want to hear any discussion about it.
I mean, it is undoubtedly top 3, and I would say there's a really strong argument for it to be number 1. Don't attack me.
Is number 1.
All right, it is number 1. So I think it's awesome that they found another way to work with him, and that's also really encouraging for Star Wars fans. Like, here's a guy who knows how to make a commercial property that is exactly what the fans want to see. He's strongly associated with the Star Wars series. I know he's a producer on it. I don't know if he's the actual showrunner or not. But regardless, hopefully his presence there is an indicator that this is going to be done right.
Yeah.
And, it's something to look forward to.
Yeah. And I mean, again, Disney, just in their film division alone, despite their stock price rising and all the other excitement around that company, I haven't checked the box office.
Lots of theme parks.
Yes, that as well. I haven't checked the box office standings recently, but the last time I checked, 4 of the top 5 movies this year are Disney films.
That's right.
And they still are they're throwing all this money at new content. So like I said, I really give them credit. So looking forward to that. That's it's going to be one of those things where when the time comes, I'm going to have to say, I'm going to have to shell for this stupid Disney thing so that I can watch some of these shows so that we can have some content for the podcast. And, am I going to cancel Netflix? Probably not. I have to find a way to cut those expenses out somewhere else, I guess.
That's very, 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 very annoying, but I appreciate that you're going to do that and then invite me over to watch the show on your service.
Well, you're going to get CBS All Access so we can watch 2 shows. Coming up next, the trailer segment. Trailer segment. That wasn't very good. We're still trying to figure out a way to introduce the trailer segment. Terrence, do you want to take a crack at introducing the trailer segment?
Trailer segment.
Trailer segment. Okay, no. All right. Trailer segment. First up, let's talk about the Dark Phoenix trailer, the next X-Men movie.
Which we mentioned earlier in the show. It's being delayed, pushed back on its release date.
Yes. So I have missed a couple of X-Men movies, but that's okay. This one didn't really get my engine going. I have some questions. Usually I would say at this point, no matter what, I'm going to see it. But it turns out there are a couple of X-Men movies that I haven't seen recently. I never saw the X-Men Wolverine Origins one, and I never saw X-Men Apocalypse. So I'm behind, and we'll just have to see if this one draws me in, I guess, to subsequent trailers.
Yeah, I did not see the last X-Men movie, and I mean, I don't particularly care to see this one either. I mean, I'm just going to say it. They don't look very good. I mean, Marvel has conditioned us to have a certain expectation from their films, and the stuff that comes from the Marvel studios, I mean, it's just, God, it just looks so good, so exciting, so interesting. The characters look so fun. Like, everything about it makes you want to see that movie. And then you watch the trailer for the new X-Men movie, and it's clearly not made by Marvel Studios, and it's coming from 20th Century Fox, and it just looks so bleh. I mean, it just looks gray and dull, and the cast is just, I mean, they just look cobbled together. Nothing about it is exciting to me.
And I mean, there's been so many X-Men movies. The trailers kind of all feel the same to me. They all have the same tone. They all sort of, I think they followed the same formula. Like if you just matched up all the recent X-Men trailers, I feel like they would kind of all have the same feel to them, with the possible exception of Logan, because that was just different.
Oh yeah, very different. Yeah,
strange.
I mean, I think probably everyone at this point is just ready for them to shut down these X-Men movies, just work a deal like they did with Spider-Man to give. Well, actually, the deal's done, right? So Disney has already merged with 20th Century Fox. So the next X-Men movie we're going to get will be from Marvel Studios, right? And it's going to be a reboot. They're going to recast it. They're going to start from scratch. They're going to organically have it grow out of the Marvel Studios cinematic universe. I'm all for that. I don't need this leftover film, and it feels leftover. I mean, I don't want to trash it based on the trailer,
right?
But I feel like we really are doing that. And if you're a big fan of this franchise, if you like the last couple, you're probably going to really like this one. It looks like it picks up where the last one left off and just keeps taking it in that direction. I'm over it. I'm ready to see the MCU version of these characters.
Yeah, and the title character, Dark Phoenix. I'm blanking on the actual character name. Is it Phoenix?
It's Jean Grey.
Yeah, Jean Grey's. She doesn't have like a little sub character name. I'm not well versed in X-Men. Maybe. It's just okay. Yeah. So they for the I guess the first class cast. It's Jean Grey is now played by Sophie Turner, who you'll best know from playing Lady Sansa in the Game of Thrones series. And clearly the movie centers around her character. I don't know if she actually is the main character in the movie or not. I don't know if she is the type of actress that can carry a lead role in a movie. I don't get that sense from Game of Thrones anyway. And that's no projection on her ability, really. She's just, she's young and she's new to it. And I don't know if she's got the chops to carry a full movie on her shoulders. But again, it may be so ensemble that it doesn't play out that way.
Yeah, I mean, she's certainly not the person on the cast making the most money. Mm-hmm. She's probably number 4 down on that list.
Yeah. All right. Next one. Let's do an update on a trailer we've already talked about. There's a new Fantastic Beasts trailer, Crimes of Grindelwald, I think the name of the story is. And so the new trailer for this is completely different from the original trailer. So I give them credit for making it look like almost an entirely new movie.
Definitely.
I gotta say I'm not a big Harry Potter guy at all. Like I didn't even know what a Muggle was until fairly recently.
Oh, because you are not a fan.
I'm just not. It's not that I'm not a fan. I don't dislike it. It's just not my thing. So this one I'm more intrigued by after the second trailer. I mean, I actually kind of want to see it now. I did see the last one, but it was only very recently. This one kind of makes me want to see it in the theater a little bit because it's coming out during Christmas, and who doesn't like to go see a movie during Christmas season? So I'm fairly intrigued by it.
Yeah, like you said, the new take that the second trailer provides is, I think, much better. It was more intriguing to me. It's also nice to see more of the characters from the first film sort of brought back into the fold with the new trailer. Because, if you enjoyed anything about that first film, it was probably kind of the camaraderie of pulling these characters together and sending them on this adventure as a little group. And so the second movie, you get to see a little more of that, and you're like, hey, they're all coming back. I enjoyed that aspect of it. I really liked the Harry Potter movies. I was a big fan of the books. The kind of Fantastic Beasts, I don't have as strong a connection to that. The previous one, it was fine. But it felt exactly like it was. It was a sequel to the Harry Potter series. Harry Potter series.
And it looked like that J.K. Rowling was the only writer on this project?
Right, yeah. So that's another interesting note, is there does not seem to be a screenwriter for this one. It seems to be that Rowling herself is the screenwriter. Not just the story, but the actual screenplay as well. I don't know what to make of that, because without question, the one truly reliable, strong element that runs through all of the Harry Potter films is the screenwriting. I believe all but one of the films were written by the same guy. And he, in multiple interviews, had said that he always felt that it was his responsibility to protect those characters. And he took that very, very seriously. And for him to be gone now, and you have someone who's not a screenwriter providing the screenplay, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that works out.
And apparently, and this is just secondhand information for me, because again, I'm not well versed in the Harry Potter universe. Apparently, there are some revelations that are revealed if you watch this trailer closely and you're a huge Harry Potter lore fan, but I didn't catch them. I've been told they're in there. So if you're a big fan and you're listening and you haven't watched the new trailer yet, watch it and see if you pick up on it. Yeah.
So there's references to a character or two from the Harry Potter movies that even casual fans would probably remember. How significant their presence in this film is, I think, varies on how deeply into that lore you go. Like if you're mega deep into the fandom, then it's probably a much bigger deal than if you just liked all the movies and saw them all.
Yeah. Okay, so now we got 2 more trailers to talk about. We'll also call this the John C. Reilly segment of the show because these last 2 trailers both have John C. Reilly. If you're not familiar, Boogie Nights, what was that Walk Hard thing, the Dewey Cox story?
He was the voice of Ralph in Wreck-It Ralph.
Yep, and I assume in the sequel as well.
Yes, and he has appeared a couple of times as the other half of a Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly team up.
Step Brothers with Will Ferrell.
Yes.
And
Talladega Nights.
Talladega Nights with Will Ferrell. Shake and bake, brother. Shake and bake. So he is in. Let's save the Will Ferrell combo for the last one. Let's talk about Sisters Brothers first. Sisters Brothers, the Sisters Brothers, is a Western starring John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix as the Sisters Brothers, and it doesn't look too, like you talked a little bit earlier about modern Westerns. They don't really draw you in too much. I'm intrigued to see this one because, you know, I like those actors, and and Westerns, again, like I want to like Westerns so much that I sort of gravitate to them, even if I ultimately come away disappointed. So it looks like it's got its old, there's gold, there's probably going to end up being revenge.
Yes.
As you instructed last week.
There's definitely revenge, I can assure you of that.
Yeah, and that, you know, I mean, it doesn't look amazing or anything, but I'm intrigued to see it just because I like those actors, and I'm drawn to Westerns like a moth to a light.
Yeah, it didn't really do a whole lot to me. When the trailer opens, you know, and you see John C. Reilly and Joaquin Phoenix dressed as cowboys, obviously your initial thought is, oh, it's a comedy, right? And it opens with kind of a lighthearted moment. And so you really do think, oh, this is going to be a comedy. And so you kind of sit up and take notice. Pretty quickly you realize, no, it's not. This is a real Western. And they've decided to cast John C. Reilly, Joaquin Phoenix, and Jake Gyllenhaal in this Western. And for me, those 3 actors in a Western, or any drama for that matter, is kind of 3 big red flags. This is a movie that I would probably only rent. I can't imagine going to a theater to see it.
It's directed by here we go again with the French.
All the French.
Jacques Audiard is my best attempt at that guy's name.
French or a pirate.
Yes, and he's got several directing credits. A lot of them are French movies. I don't know if he's actually done anything. I mean, he did something called Rust and Bone in 2012. Don't know anything about that. Something called Deepon in 2015.
So is this his first American film?
Looking at his filmography, unless it's one of those other previous ones, it may actually be. It appears that is, but can't guarantee that. So, yeah, John C. Reilly, weird kind of career. I think you mentioned when we watched the trailer, great in comedies.
Yes.
Serious stuff, maybe not so much.
Yeah. Whenever I think about him in a serious film, I can't help but go back to Magnolia.
Yeah, I don't remember that one too well.
Yeah.
Not one of my favorites from old PTA. All right, so last trailer of the day. Also John C. Reilly, this time teamed up again with Will Ferrell.
Yes, a much better pairing.
Holmes and Watson. And if you're wondering what that is, if it sounds familiar, yeah, it's exactly what you think it is. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, starring Will Ferrell as Sherlock Holmes and John C. Reilly as Dr. Watson. And this movie looks funny and fun and ridiculous, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, if you liked either Step Brothers or Talladega Nights, you know what to expect. You're going to like this. I mean, it's those 2 guys playing off each other the way they do so perfectly. You know, tons of great laughs in the trailer. You know, a couple groaners as well, but hey, that you get what you get. I'm looking forward to it. This one I will definitely see. This one I will definitely see in a theater. And I mean, this is how I like my John C. Reilly.
Yeah, it looks funny. It looks a bit crude, and like you said, there were some missteps in the trailer too, some stuff that kind of fell flat. But man, there's just something about those 2 guys and the synergy they have in a comedy together. Were you a fan of Step Brothers and Talladega Nights?
Yes, I was. I was a huge fan of both of them.
Yep.
And their brand of humor, it only becomes kind of better as they get older because it's just more ludicrous as they get older. Like they behave the way 15-year-old boys behave. And, you know, sometimes that can grow tiresome, obviously, in a comedy, but there's just something about the earnestness with which they portray those types of characters, that it just works for me.
This is another director who has a writing background, and he's got a tricksy little name that fooled me at first somehow.
Which was also really funny.
His name is Ethan Coen, not to be confused with Ethan Coen of the Coen brothers. When I saw the director name Ethan Coen, my brain just auto-filled the H and thought, why is this half of the legendary Coen brothers breaking off to do a silly comedy with John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell? Well, it turns out it's Ethan Coen, not Ethan. So looking at his history, he has directed one other movie called Get Hard. Was that the Dewey Cox thing? Did I have that? I thought that was Walk Hard.
Yeah, that was Walk Hard. Get Hard was
it was okay. It starred Will Ferrell and Kevin Hart.
Kevin Hart, yes, that's right. Yes.
Okay, I did not.
That's what I was trying to remember. Yeah, Will Ferrell goes to prison, or he's going to go to prison, so he wants to, get hard so he can survive his stay in prison.
Oh yeah, that sounds familiar now.
He enlists Kevin Hart to help him do that.
All right, so that's the only other movie he's directed. But as a writer, you mentioned 15-year-old boy humor. This guy, his very first credit is as a writer of Beavis and Butthead.
Oh wow.
That's kind of funny for that. That's kind of a funny career thing if you're, of a certain age, to see that this guy's first credit was writing for Beavis and Butthead. He also had a 4 or 5 year stint on King of the Hill. He was a writer on that movie that everyone seems to love, Idiocracy. That one's come up a lot in recent days.
Yeah, it sure has. Well, ever since a certain election 2 years ago.
Yeah, but anyway, he wrote on the American Dad series. He was one of the writers on Tropic Thunder.
Oh, wow. Man, how was there never a sequel to Tropic Thunder?
Yeah. So how do you feel about a quick tangent to end the show?
Hit me.
Okay. Tropic Thunder, the Robert Downey Jr. character in that movie. Mm-hmm. Would they make that movie today?
Well, considering how shocked I was that they made that character when they did, mm-hmm. and it's just a few years later, yeah, I don't see why there would be a change.
I'm not sure. I feel like in 2018 that might be a tough sell, but
more than it was in 2015 or whenever that was.
Oh man, I think that movie's much older than you realize. But yeah, I have 2008. So
okay,
yeah, that was 10 years ago. So I don't know, but that his Robert Downey Jr. If you're ever bored and you don't remember that movie well, because I'm sure you've all seen it, just go on YouTube and just watch a mashup of all the stuff that Robert Downey Jr. does in that movie, and it puts me to tears. It makes me laugh so hard. Anyway, so Watson and Holmes, I will definitely be there to see that. Didn't catch the release date, but it's probably during the holiday season sometime.
Yeah, that would make sense. That'd be perfect.
All right, well, that's all we got, unless you have some sort of great drop the mic walk off moment.
No, I got nothing.
Okay, yeah, really bad at ending shows. All right, guys, appreciate you listening. We will do it again next week.
There is elderly punching in the trailer to Holmes and Watson, though.
We'll see you next week. The show's over.